Ryan never believed in ghost stories. He had heard hundreds of them growing up. Stories about haunted houses, abandoned hospitals, shadow people standing at the edge of highways, and voices coming from empty rooms. Most of them sounded like exaggerations created by bored people looking for attention. That belief followed him into adulthood. At 28, Ryan worked as a freelance audio engineer in Oregon. He spent most of his days cleaning recordings, restoring damaged sound files, and editing podcasts. His job required logic and patience. Every strange noise had an explanation. Every mysterious sound could be traced to interference, faulty equipment, or environmental conditions. At least, that was what he thought. Everything changed during the autumn of 2024. The email arrived at 2:13 a.m. Rayan was finishing the project when a notification appeared on his laptop screen. The sender's address looked old and oddly formatted. The subject line contained only 3 words: hollow signal. Normally he would have ignored it, but the attached file caught his attention. The file was labeled recording-17.wave. There was no message, no explanation, just a sound file. Curious, Rayan downloaded it. The recording was exactly 4 minutes and 11 seconds long. The first minute contained nothing but static. Then came a strange sound, a low humming vibration. It almost sounded human. Rayan increased the volume. The humming continued, slow, uneven, almost breathing. As he listened more carefully, he noticed something disturbing. The sound wasn't random. It had a rhythm, like someone trying to speak through layers of interference. He ran the audio through several filters. The static faded. The humming became clearer. Then his blood turned cold. Hidden beneath the noise was a voice, a very weak voice, a voice that repeated the same sentence again and again. Rayan listened 3 times before understanding the words. "Do not answer the signal." The voice sounded terrifying. The recording ended abruptly. Rayan sat motionless. The file was obviously some kind of prank, yet something about it felt wrong. The fear in the voice seemed genuine. He checked the sender information. The account no longer existed. That was unusual. Still, he eventually shut down his computer and went to sleep. He dreamed of static. Miles and miles of endless static stretching across a dark landscape. And somewhere inside it, something was moving, watching, waiting. The next morning he almost forgot about the recording, until another email arrived. This time the subject line read, "You listened." Rayan frowned. Again there was no message, only another audio file. Recording 18.wave. His curiosity returned. He downloaded the file. This recording lasted 6 minutes. The first 5 minutes contained silence. Not normal silence. Absolute silence. No background noise, no room tone, nothing. The kind of silence that should not exist in any recording. Then a voice appeared. A different voice. Male. Deep. Cold. It spoke only once. Rayan. His stomach tightened. He replayed it. The voice had spoken his name. Clearly. Perfectly. He immediately checked the waveform. There was no sign of editing. No indication that the name had been inserted separately. The entire recording appeared authentic. For the first time, genuine unease crept into his mind. How did they know his name? A prank? Maybe. Who would spend this much effort creating it? That night he searched online for information about the hollow signal. To his surprise, several obscure forum discussions appeared. Most were years old. Many had been deleted. The remaining posts told fragments of a disturbing story. According to the posts, people across the United States had occasionally received mysterious audio files. The files always contained strange sounds, voices, warnings, names. Those who continued listening supposedly disappeared. Rayan laughed when he read that part. Internet myths thrived on exaggeration. Still, one detail caught his attention. Every post eventually mentioned the same location. Blackthorn Ridge, a remote mountain area in northern Oregon, only 2 hours from where he lived. One forum user claimed a radio station had operated there during the 1960s. Another claimed the station had burned down after a deadly accident. Most records had supposedly vanished. Nobody seemed certain. The information was fragmented and incomplete, yet the location kept appearing. Blackthorn Ridge, again and again. That night, another email arrived. The subject line contained coordinates. Coordinates leading directly to Blackthorn Ridge. No attachment this time. No message. Just coordinates. Rayan stared at the screen. A cold feeling settled in his chest. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt as though someone expected him to go there. Someone watching from far away. The following evening, he packed recording equipment into his truck. He told himself he was investigating a mystery, nothing more. The drive took nearly 3 hours. Dark clouds covered the sky. Rain fell intermittently. The road became increasingly isolated. Eventually, civilization disappeared behind him. Only forests remained. Towering pine trees lined both sides of the road like silent walls. The deeper he traveled into the mountains, the more uneasy he became. His GPS signal began failing. Cell service vanished. By sunset, he reached the coordinates. A rusted gate stood beside an overgrown path. Beyond it stretched dense woodland. An old sign lay half-buried beneath weeds. The lettering had faded. Only 2 words remained visible. Blackthorn Station. A chill ran through him. The forum posts had been real, at least part of them. Rayan grabbed a flashlight and began walking. The forest swallowed sound. No birds, no insects, nothing. Only the crunch of wet leaves beneath his boots. After nearly 20 minutes, he found the ruins. A skeletal structure emerged between the trees. The remains of a building. Collapsed walls, broken concrete, rusting metal towers. The old radio station. The place felt wrong. Not haunted, not cursed. Wrong. Like reality itself had shifted slightly out of alignment. The air felt heavier. The shadows seemed deeper. Rayan unpacked a portable recorder. Professional curiosity overcame his fear. If something strange existed here, he wanted evidence. He activated the recorder. Immediately the device produced interference. Loud interference. Far stronger than expected. He checked the settings. Everything appeared normal, yet static continued pouring from the headphones. Then he heard it. A faint voice. Far away. Almost buried beneath the noise. Rayan froze. The voice sounded like a woman, crying. The sound lasted only seconds, then disappeared. He adjusted the frequency. More interference, more static, then another voice. This one sounded male, desperate, begging. The words were impossible to understand. Suddenly the recorder emitted a piercing screech. Rayan ripped off the headphones. Pain exploded inside his ears. The screech stopped. Silence returned. His breathing echoed through the darkness. Then he noticed something. The forest was no longer empty. Someone stood near the edge of the ruins. A figure. Tall, motionless, watching him. Rayan raised his flashlight. The beam illuminated the trees. Nothing was there. The figure had vanished. His pulse accelerated. He knew what he had seen. Someone had been standing there. He hurriedly packed his equipment. The investigation was over. Whatever answers existed here could wait. He turned toward the path. Then his flashlight flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. Darkness engulfed the forest. For several seconds he couldn't see anything. When the light finally returned, he nearly screamed. The ruins had changed. The collapsed building was no longer collapsed. The structure stood complete, intact, exactly as it might have appeared decades earlier. Windows glowed with pale yellow light. Radio towers stretched into the night sky. Voices echoed from inside. Dozens of voices, talking, laughing, working. Rayan stared in disbelief. His rational mind struggled to process what he was seeing. Then movement appeared in one of the windows. Someone looked directly at him. A man wearing old-fashioned headphones. The man's expression changed instantly, from confusion to horror. The man began shouting. Though Rayan couldn't hear the words through the glass, their meaning seemed obvious. Run. The lights inside the building suddenly died. The structure vanished. The ruins returned. Silence followed. Rayan backed away. His legs trembled. Every instinct screamed at him to leave. Now, he turned and hurried toward the path. Behind him, something moved through the trees. Heavy footsteps, slow, measured, following. Rayan increased his pace. The footsteps matched him. He walked faster. The footsteps walked faster. He stopped. The footsteps stopped. A terrible realization settled over him. Whatever was behind him wanted him to know it was there. Rayan forced himself to turn around. Nothing. Only darkness between the trees. Then his flashlight revealed something impossible. Hundreds of footprints covered the muddy ground. Fresh footprints, leading toward him, as if an invisible crowd had walked out of the forest. His heart pounded violently. He began running. Branches whipped across his face. Leaves cracked beneath his boots. The footsteps followed. Not one set. Many. Hundreds. A stampede of unseen things racing through the darkness. The sounds grew closer. 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 Then everything stopped. Instantly. The silence was so sudden, it felt unnatural. Rayan finally reached the gate. His truck waited beyond it. Relief flooded through him. He climbed inside and locked the doors. For several moments, he simply sat there breathing, trying to calm himself, trying to convince himself none of it had happened. Then the radio turned on by itself. Static filled the cab. Rayan reached for the power button. The radio ignored him. The volume increased. Static roared from the speakers. A voice emerged. Weak, distorted, terrified. Do not answer. The same warning from the first recording. Then, another voice interrupted. A deeper voice. Far older. Far darker. You already did. The truck's headlights suddenly shut off. Darkness surrounded him. The radio emitted a burst of deafening noise. And for a fraction of a second, illuminated by a flash of lightning, Rayan saw something standing directly in front of the windshield. It was shaped like a human, but impossibly tall. Its limbs were too long. Its face was completely black, like a hole cut into reality. The creature leaned forward, looking directly at him. Then the lightning vanished. The darkness returned. When the headlights flickered back on, the figure was gone. Rayan started the engine and sped away. He didn't stop until reaching the highway. Only then did he notice something lying on the passenger seat. A cassette tape. Old, dust-covered, water-stained. He knew with absolute certainty it had not been there before. Written across the label were 3 faded words. Final Broadcast Archive. As Rayan stared at the tape, a terrible feeling settled in his stomach. Because deep down he already knew one thing. The emails had not brought him to Blackthorn Ridge. Something at Blackthorn Ridge had brought the emails to him. And whatever had spoken through the signal was no longer waiting in the mountains. It was coming with him. Rayan did not touch the cassette tape for 3 days. It remained on his kitchen table exactly where he had left it. Every time he looked at it, memories of Blackthorn Ridge returned. The ruined station, the impossible voices, the invisible footsteps, the things standing in front of his truck. Most disturbing of all was the realization that none of it felt like a dream anymore. The cassette was proof, a physical object, something he could hold, something that should not exist. On the 4th night, Curiosity finally won. Rain hammered against the windows of his apartment as he sat before the table. The cassette looked ancient. Its plastic shell was yellowed with age. Small cracks spread across its surface. The handwritten label was fading. Final broadcast archive. Nothing else. No date, no station name, no explanation. Rayan owned an old cassette player used for restoring vintage recordings. After several minutes of hesitation, he inserted the tape. The machine clicked. The reels began turning. Static emerged from the speakers. A low hiss filled the room. For nearly 30 seconds, there was nothing else. Then a man's voice appeared. Calm, professional. The recording sounded decades old. Good evening. This is station KBR 13, broadcasting from Blackthorn Ridge. The time is 11:47 p.m. Severe weather conditions continue across the region. We advise residents to remain indoors. The voice paused. Paper shuffled. Then something changed. The broadcaster sounded confused. We appear to be receiving unusual interference tonight. More static followed. Rayan leaned closer. The recording continued. At first it sounded like an ordinary radio broadcast. Weather reports, local announcements, music requests. Then strange things began happening. Voices interrupted transmissions. Unknown signals emerged from nowhere. Listeners called the station claiming they were hearing people talking inside their radios. People who were not alive. One caller sounded terrified. My wife died 6 months ago. She's speaking through the radio. I can hear her right now. The line abruptly disconnected. The broadcaster nervously laughed. Another caller phoned moments later. Then another. Then another. All describing the same thing. Dead voices. Lost relatives. Unknown people whispering through radio frequencies. The recording became increasingly chaotic. By midnight, panic filled the station. Staff members could be heard arguing in the background. Equipment alarms sounded. The broadcaster's voice trembled. We're receiving transmissions from frequencies that don't exist. I repeat, these frequencies do not exist. Something is wrong. Very wrong. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted through the speakers. People shouted. Someone screamed. Then came a sound Ray recognized instantly. The humming. The same humming hidden inside the email recordings. The sound grew louder, stronger, almost alive. The broadcaster spoke again. His voice barely remained steady. There's someone in the transmission room. Security reports no one entered the building. But there is definitely someone there. A long silence followed. Then, footsteps, slow footsteps, approaching the microphone. Every hair on Rayan's body stood up. The footsteps stopped. The broadcaster inhaled sharply. Oh God. The tape ended. Silence filled the apartment. Rayan sat frozen. The final words echoed inside his head. Oh God. Nothing else. No explanation. No ending. Just terror. At that exact moment, his computer emitted a notification sound. A new email. Rayan immediately felt sick. He opened it. The subject line contained a single sentence. You heard the beginning. Attached was another audio file. Recording _19.wag. His hands trembled slightly. Despite everything, he downloaded it. The file lasted only 1 minute. When he pressed play, a familiar voice emerged. The broadcaster from the cassette. But this recording sounded different. Newer. Clearer, as though it had been recorded recently. The man sounded exhausted. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. The signal spreads through listening, through attention, through memory. It learns you, it follows you. Then his voice dropped into a terrified whisper. Whatever you do, don't let it hear your name. The recording ended. Rayan stared at the screen. His name. The signal already knew his name. A cold realization settled inside him. The warning had arrived too late. That night, sleep refused to come. Around 3 a.m. he finally drifted off. The dream began normally. Dark roads stretched ahead. Rain battered the windshield. The radio played static. Nothing unusual. Then he noticed a figure standing beside the road. A woman, motionless, watching. As his truck passed, the woman turned her head. Her face was missing. Only darkness remained where her features should have been. Rayan accelerated. More figures appeared ahead. Dozens of them, standing along the roadside. Everyone faceless. Everyone watching. The radio suddenly crackled. A voice emerged. Rayan. His eyes opened instantly. He was awake, sitting upright in bed, sweating, breathing heavily. The room was dark, silent. Then the voice spoke again. Rayan, not in the dream, inside the apartment. A whisper drifted from somewhere beyond his bedroom door. Rayan froze. The voice sounded distant, yet unmistakably real. Rayan. Silence followed. Several seconds passed. Nothing moved. Nothing happened. Eventually he grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the hallway. The apartment was empty. Every room sat exactly as he had left it. No intruders, no open windows, nothing. Still, the feeling remained. Someone had been there, watching, listening, waiting. The following afternoon, Rayan began researching Blackthorn Ridge more seriously. Most official records had disappeared. The station barely existed online. After hours of searching, he finally found something. A scanned newspaper article from 1968. The headline immediately caught his attention. Mysterious fire destroys radio facility. According to the article, 32 employees had died during a catastrophic fire at the station. Authorities never determined the cause. Survivors described bizarre equipment failures moments before the disaster. Many reported hearing voices through communication systems. Voices belonging to people who were not present. One witness claimed the building had continued broadcasting for nearly an hour after being consumed by flames. That detail disturbed Rayan more than anything else, because radio equipment destroyed by fire should not function. Yet multiple witnesses reported hearing transmissions long after the station was gone. The article ended with an unusual sentence. Federal investigators classified several findings. No explanation followed. Classified. Why would a local station fire require classified investigations? Rayan needed answers. 3 days later, he drove to a small coastal town mentioned in the article. According to public records, one station employee had survived the disaster. A technician named Harold Pierce. If anyone knew the truth, it would be him. Finding Harold proved surprisingly easy. The man still lived alone in a weather-beaten house overlooking the ocean. He was 90 years old, thin, fragile. His eyes seemed permanently haunted. When Rayan introduced himself and mentioned Blackthorn Ridge, the old man's face immediately drained of color. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Harold opened the door. "You shouldn't have come." His voice was barely above a whisper. Inside the house, dusty photographs covered the walls. Many showed the station during its early years. Employees smiled beside equipment. Engineers posed with antennas. Broadcasters sat behind microphones. Normal people, ordinary lives, all dead now. Harold stared at one photograph for a long time. Then, he spoke. It wasn't a fire. Rayan's pulse quickened. What happened? The old man's hands trembled. "We opened something." Rayan frowned. "What do you mean?" Harold looked toward the window, as though expecting something outside. There was a signal, a frequency, one we'd never seen before. Nobody knew where it came from. At first, it seemed harmless, just static. Then, voices appeared. The old man's breathing became uneven. People thought it was a prank. They started listening, recording it, studying it. That's when the decks began. Rayan remained silent. Harold continued. People started disappearing. One engineer vanished from a locked room. A broadcaster disappeared during a live transmission. Others claimed they saw things inside reflections, shadows, standing behind them, watching, waiting. The old man swallowed hard. The station manager ordered us to stop investigating. Nobody listened. By then, we were obsessed. Rayan leaned forward. Obsessed? Harold nodded. The signal wanted attention. The more you listened, the stronger it became. The more it learned about you. The old man's eyes suddenly widened. He grabbed Rayan's wrist. Listen carefully. Have you heard it speak your name? A chill swept through Rayan. Yes. Harold immediately released him. Fear filled the old man's face. Then you're already marked. The room became silent. Rayan felt his heartbeat accelerating. What does that mean? Old looked away. It means it knows where you are. Those words lingered in the air. Heavy, uncomfortable, terrifying. Several minutes later, Rayan left. As he drove away, he glanced into the rearview mirror. Harold still stood on the porch, watching, looking frightened. Not for himself, for Rayan. Night fell during the drive home. The highway remained empty. Only darkness surrounded him. About halfway through the journey, the truck radio activated by itself. Static flooded the speakers. Rayan cursed and switched it off. The radio turned back on. Static continued. Then voices emerged. Multiple voices. Dozens, hundreds, whispering simultaneously. The sound resembled a crowd trapped beneath water. Rayan pulled over. The whispers grew louder. Then every voice suddenly stopped. One voice remained. A child's voice. Soft. Lonely. Help me. Rayan's stomach tightened. Help me. The voice sounded close, almost inside the truck. Help me. The child's tone changed, becoming deeper, older, wrong. Help me find you. The radio exploded with noise. Rayan unplugged it completely. Silence returned. He continued driving, but unease followed him all the way home. That night he discovered something impossible. The photographs from Harold's house had somehow appeared on his phone. Dozens of images, pictures he had never taken. Every photo showed employees at Blackthorn Station. At first, he assumed Harold had somehow transferred them. Then he noticed the final image. Unlike the others, this photograph was recent. Very recent. The image showed Blackthorn Ridge, the ruined station, the forest, and standing among the ruins was Rayan. The picture had been taken from behind. Someone had photographed him during his first visit. His pulse thumped. He zoomed in. A second figure stood between the trees. Tall, dark, watching him. The faceless thing from the highway dream. The thing from the lightning flash. The thing from the signal. Suddenly another image appeared on the screen. Then another. Then another. The photos were being added automatically. New pictures, taken seconds apart. Each showed his apartment building, closer every time. The first image showed the street. The second showed the entrance. The third showed the hallway. The fourth showed his apartment door. Rayan's blood turned to ice. A final image loaded. The screen nearly slipped from his hands. The photograph showed the inside of his apartment, taken from behind him. Someone stood only a few feet away when the picture was taken. Someone impossibly tall. Someone whose face was nothing but darkness. The lights inside the apartment suddenly went out. Every bulb, every appliance, everything. Darkness consumed the room. Then somewhere behind him, a voice whispered, Rayan. Not from a speaker, not from a phone, not from a recording. A real voice, inside the apartment, only inches away. Time. It sounded happy. Rayan stood frozen in the corridor. The observer blocked the only visible exit. Red emergency lights flashed across the abandoned facility. Each pulse of light revealed the creature in greater detail. Its body resembled a human shape, only from a distance. Up close, the proportions were horribly long. Its arms nearly touched the floor. Its neck appeared too long. Its movement seemed delayed, as though reality itself struggled to keep up with it. Most disturbing was the face, or rather the absence of one. Where eyes, nose, and mouth should have existed, there was only darkness. Not a shadow, not a mask, a hole, a living void. The humming beneath the facility grew louder. The walls vibrated. Cracks spread across the concrete like spider webs. Behind the observer, darkness crawled across the corridor. Hundreds of eyes opened inside it, watching him, following every movement. Rayan backed away. The observer tilted its head. Then it took a step forward. The sound echoed unnaturally. One footstep, yet dozens of echoes followed, as if countless invisible creatures were mimicking the movement. Rayan turned and ran. The corridor stretched endlessly ahead. Emergency lights flickered. Doors slammed somewhere in the darkness. The voices returned. Thousands of whispers overlapping one another. Some sounded frightened. Some sounded angry. Some sounded desperate. Many were calling his name. Among them, he recognized another voice. Harold, Rayan, do not follow. Find the lower chamber. Destroy the source. The voice vanished. Had he been? Harold somehow survived. Or was the signal using his voice? There was no way to know. Behind him came another footstep. Closer now. The observer was following. Rayan pushed forward. A metal sign hanging from the ceiling caught his attention. Level C, Research Access. An arrow pointed toward a stairwell. He rushed through the door. Concrete steps spiraled downward. The deeper he descended, the louder the humming became. It no longer sounded mechanical. It sounded alive. Breathing, waiting, listening. Several floors below, he reached another corridor. This section of the facility appeared different. The walls were reinforced. Heavy blast doors lined both sides. Government markings covered the metal surfaces. Many had faded with age. Others appeared deliberately scratched away. One door remained partially open. Rayan slipped inside. The room resembled a command center. Dust covered old computer terminals. Maps hung from the walls. Stacks of documents lay scattered across the floor. In the center stood a projector screen. To his surprise, electricity still flowed through the machine connected to it. The screen flickered. Then an image appeared. A man wearing a military uniform. The recording date displayed beneath him, October 12, 1974. The officer looked exhausted. If anyone discovers this archive, understand that containment has failed. We underestimated the phenomenon. We believed it was a signal, then a frequency anomaly, then an interdimensional breach. All assumptions were wrong. The image crackled. The officer continued. The entity does not travel through radio waves. Radio waves merely allow it to be perceived. The signal is a symptom, not the source. Rayan listened carefully. The officer pointed toward a diagram. The screen showed a massive circular structure beneath the facility. The original opening exists below this site. Blackthorn Station was built decades later, after traces of the anomaly appeared elsewhere. Every outbreak originates from the same location. The hollow chamber. Rayan felt his heartbeat quicken. The officer lowered his voice. The observer is not the entity. It is only a collector. Its purpose is to identify suitable hosts, suitable listeners, suitable doorways. The video suddenly distorted. Static flooded the screen. Shapes moved inside the interference. Human faces. Hundreds of them. The officer glanced behind him. Fear spread across his face. It's awake. The recording ended. Darkness filled the room. Then a sound emerged from the hallway. A scraping noise. Slow, steady, approaching. Rayan stepped toward the doorway. The corridor outside stood empty, yet the scraping continued. He followed the sound. The noise led him deeper underground, past sealed laboratories, past collapsed tunnels, past rooms abandoned for decades. Eventually, he reached a massive steel door. Unlike everything else in the facility, this door remained intact. Someone had welded thick metal bars across it. Warning signs covered the surface. Do not open. Seal must remain intact. Level Omega containment. The humming beyond the door felt almost physical. It vibrated through his chest, through his bones, through his teeth. A small viewing window sat near eye level. Rayan looked through it. His blood froze. Beyond the door stretched an enormous underground chamber. The cavern seemed impossibly large, far larger than the facility above. Ancient stone walls disappeared into darkness. At the center stood a circular pit, a black pit, perfectly round, perfectly still. The darkness inside appeared deeper than anything he had ever seen. As he stared, movement appeared. Something shifted far below, something enormous. Then dozens of pale shapes emerged around the edge of the pit. People, or what had once been people. Hundreds stood motionless around the opening, facing inward, watching whatever lived below. Their bodies looked wrong, thin, twisted, drained of life, yet somehow still standing, still waiting. A sudden impact shook the door. Rayan jumped backward. Another impact followed, then another. Something was striking the opposite side. The steel groaned. Metal bent in. The pale figures around the pit slowly turned toward him, every head moving simultaneously, every face focused on the viewing window. The sight nearly stopped his heart, because none of them had eyes, only empty darkness. Another impact hit the door. This time the metal cracked. Rayan ran. The chamber behind him erupted with noise, screams, whispers, laughter, all blending into a single horrifying sound. He raced back through the corridors. The facility trembled violently. Chunks of concrete crashed from the ceiling. Somewhere above him, alarms began blaring. Darkness swallowed him. Rayan stopped moving. His flashlight followed him. Silence surrounded him. Then footsteps echoed nearby. Not the heavy steps of the observer. These were human. Many human footsteps, approaching from all directions. Rayan pressed himself against the wall. The footsteps came closer, closer, closer. Then pale figures emerged from the darkness. Dozens of them, the same eyeless people from the chamber. They filled the corridor, walking slowly. Their movements looked unnatural, as though invisible strings controlled them. One passed within inches of him. Its skin appeared gray and cracked. Its mouth hung open, yet no sound emerged. Another followed, then another, then hundreds more, an endless procession, moving toward the upper levels, moving toward the surface, toward the world outside. Fear surged through Rayan. The containment had failed. Whatever slept beneath the facility was escaping. Suddenly, every figure stopped. The corridor became silent. Then all their heads turned in the same direction, toward the darkness behind them. A low growl emerged, deep, ancient, hungry. The eyeless crowd immediately dropped to their knees, every one of them, as though worshipping something. Rayan slowly looked behind him. The observer stood at the far end of the corridor, motionless, watching. Behind it loomed a shape far larger than before. Only fragments were visible, a massive outline hidden within darkness. The eye alone appeared larger than a truck. It stared directly at Rayan, and for a brief moment, he understood something impossible. The entity was looking through him, reading him, exploring every memory he possessed. His childhood, his fears, his regrets, everything. Pain exploded inside his head. He collapsed. Images flooded his mind. Ancient cities swallowed by darkness. Forests filled with eyeless figures. Crowds standing around enormous black pits. People listening to strange signals through primitive radios, through telegraphs, through devices that should never have existed in their time. The same entity appeared in every vision, waiting, growing, learning. Thousands of years passed in seconds. Then the visions ended. Rayan opened his eyes. The corridor was empty. The observer was gone. The eyeless crowd was gone. Only silence remained. Beside him lay an old notebook. He did not remember seeing it before. The cover bore a single name, Dr. Evelyn Carter. Inside were research notes dating back decades. One entry caught his attention immediately. The hollow entity cannot fully cross into our reality without a stable anchor. The observer collects anchors. Each listener becomes connected. Each connection strengthens the opening. If enough connections form simultaneously, complete emergence becomes possible. Further down, another note had been written in red ink. Destroy the central resonance point. Without resonance, the opening collapses. Location: Blackthorn Ridge Transmission Tower. Rayan stared at the words. Blackthorn Ridge. Everything led back there. The emails, the recordings, the station, the signal. The resonance point was still active, which meant the nightmare could still be stopped. A deafening roar suddenly echoed through the facility. The floor cracked beneath his feet. Darkness poured from the fractures. The entire structure began collapsing. Rayan sprinted toward the nearest exit. Concrete exploded around him. Pipes burst. Walls crumbled. The facility was dying. Minutes later, he emerged onto the mountainside. Cold night air struck his face. Behind him, the facility collapsed into itself. The ground sank. Dust clouds rose into the sky. For several moments, he simply stood there breathing. Then he noticed something on the distant horizon. Far away, beyond the mountains, a faint red glow pulsed against the clouds. Blackthorn Ridge. The old transmission tower was active. Even from miles away, he could see it. And above the tower hovered a vast shadow, so large it nearly blended with the night sky. Watching, waiting, preparing. Rayan finally understood what needed to happen. If the tower remained active, the doorway would continue widening. More people would hear the signal. More people would disappear. Eventually, the entity would emerge completely. And if that happened, there would be nowhere left to run. As thunder rolled across the mountains, Rayan climbed into his truck and started the engine. His final journey was about to begin. And somewhere beyond the darkness, the hollow entity was already expecting him. The storm arrived before Rayan reached Blackthorn Ridge. Dark clouds swallowed the moon. Rain lashed against the windshield. Thunder rolled across the mountains like distant explosions. For hours he drove through darkness, following winding roads that seemed emptier than before. The closer he came to Blackthorn Ridge, the stranger everything became. Radio stations vanished. GPS stopped working. Even the truck's clock became strange. The numbers flickered constantly. At one moment it showed 11:42 p.m. Seconds later it displayed 3:17 a.m. Then 8:05 p.m. Time itself felt unstable. The signal was growing stronger. Rayan could feel it. The humming had never truly left him. For days, it had remained buried beneath every sound around him. Now it was becoming impossible to ignore. It vibrated inside his skull, inside his chest, like a second heartbeat. Waiting, watching, learning. Lightning illuminated the mountains ahead. And there it was, Blackthorn Ridge. The transmission tower stood against the sky like a giant skeletal finger. Red warning lights blinked near the top, yet something was different. The tower looked far larger than before, far taller, as if reality itself had stretched around it. Dark clouds spiraled above the structure. The storm seemed centered directly over the tower. Rayan parked near the old gate. The forest beyond appeared darker than natural darkness. Even his flashlight struggled to penetrate it. The moment he stepped onto the path, the humming intensified. His notebook remained tucked inside his jacket. Dr. Evelyn Carter's final instructions echoed through his mind. Destroy the central resonance point. Collapse the opening. Stop the emergence. Simple words. Nearly impossible task. The forest felt alive. Trees groaned in the wind. Shadows shifted between trunks. Several times Rayan thought he saw pale figures standing among the trees, watching silently. The eyeless people. Whenever lightning flashed, more appeared. Dozens, hundreds, standing motionless, waiting. As he approached the station ruins, a terrible realization settled over him. The forest was no longer empty. It was full. Filled with listeners, filled with people the signal had claimed. Some looked recent, others appeared decades old, yet none seemed fully alive, nor fully dead. They simply stood there, watching him walk toward the tower, watching him approach the end. The ruins finally emerged through the rain, except they were no longer ruins. The station stood complete, exactly as it had appeared during that impossible vision weeks earlier. Windows glowed with warm yellow light. Voices drifted from inside. Laughter, conversations, music. The station looked alive, operating, occupied. Yet Rayan knew the truth. The building had burned down decades ago. This was not real. Or perhaps it was becoming real. The distinction no longer mattered. The front door stood open, waiting. He entered. The lobby appeared untouched by time. Everything looked perfect. Fresh paint, working lights, clean floors. Old photographs lined the walls. Employees smiled from black and white pictures. Broadcasters posed beside equipment. Normal people, lives. All dead. As Rayan walked deeper into the building, he noticed something unsettling. The photographs were changing. Faces slowly turned toward him. Eyes followed his movements. Smiles widened. The expressions became long, predatory, hungry. Then every photograph began whispering, "Rayan, Rayan, Rayan." The voices filled the hallway. He hurried past them. At the center of the station stood the broadcast room, the heart of the facility, the place where everything had begun. Inside, rows of ancient equipment hummed softly. Every machine was active, every dial moved, every monitor glowed, yet no power source existed. At the center stood a microphone, waiting. A single red light blinked above it. On air. The humming became deafening. Suddenly, every speaker in the room activated. Static exploded from them. Then a voice emerged. Not the observer, not Harold, not the broadcaster. Something else, something older. The voice seemed to come from everywhere simultaneously. "You came willingly." Rayan remained silent. The voice continued. "You listened, you followed, you opened the path." The air grew colder. Shadows spread across the walls. The room darkened. Thousands of faces appeared within the static on the monitors. Faces of missing people. Faces of listeners. Faces trapped inside the signal. "You belong to us now." Rayan clenched his fists. "No." The response echoed through the station. "No." Almost sounded amused. "You misunderstand. The emergence has already begun." Reality rippled. The walls dissolved. The ceiling vanished. The station disappeared. Suddenly, Rayan stood somewhere else. An endless black landscape stretched in every direction. No sky, no stars, no horizon, only darkness. And in the distance stood something enormous, a hollow entity. For several moments, his mind refused to process its size. The thing towered above mountains. Its body constantly shifted shape, sometimes humanoid, sometimes something far worse. Thousands of eyes opened across its surface. Millions of mouths whispered simultaneously. The sight alone felt impossible. Ancient, alien, wrong. Rayan understood instantly why no human language could properly describe it. The entity existed outside normal understanding, outside normal reality, and it was awake. The ground trembled as the creature moved. Not walking, approaching. The distance between them shrank unnaturally fast. The voices grew louder. Rayan, join us. Become part of the signal. Become part of forever. Images flooded his mind. He saw endless crowds standing around black pits. Entire cities swallowed by darkness. Worlds consumed. Civilizations erased. The entity had done this before. Many times. In places humanity would never remember. It moved from reality to reality. Feeding. Growing. Expanding. The signal was merely its method of entry. Its key. Its doorway. Earth was next. The observer appeared nearby. Time ran, saw it clearly. The creature knelt before the entity, like a servant before a god. Then dozens of observers emerged from the darkness. Then hundreds, thousands, each identical, each watching, each waiting. The realization struck him like ice. There had never been only one observer. There were countless. Scouts, collectors, messengers. The first stage of invasion. The entity's eyes focused on him. Pain exploded inside his skull. Memories began slipping away. His childhood, his parents, friends, names, faces, everything. The entity was consuming him, absorbing him, turning him into another voice inside the signal. Rayan dropped to one knee. The darkness pressed against him. The whispers became overwhelming. Resistance felt impossible. Then, something unexpected happened. Another voice emerged. Herald, fight it. A second voice followed. The old broadcaster. Then another, and another. Thousands of voices suddenly filled the darkness. Not servants, not listeners, prisoners. The trapped souls inside the signal. For decades they had remained imprisoned, watching, waiting. Now they were helping him. The entity roared. The sound shook reality itself. The imprisoned voices grew louder. Run! Find the tower! End it! The black landscape began cracking. The illusion shattered. Reality returned. Rayan found himself back inside the station. The broadcast room. The microphone. The equipment. Everything exactly where it had been. Except now the walls trembled violently. The emergence had accelerated. Outside the windows, he could see the sky tearing open. Massive cracks stretched across the clouds. Darkness leaked through them. The entity was crossing. He had minutes left, maybe less. Rayan searched the equipment frantically. There, at the center of the room, a machine unlike the others. Ancient, massive, connected to cables running directly into the transmission tower. The resonance point, the source, destroy it. Simple. Except the machine wasn't unguarded. The observers were waiting. Dozens emerged from the shadows, motionless, watching. Then they attacked. Their movements blurred, far faster than before. Rayan barely avoided the first strike. A claw sliced through the air where his head had been. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, swung desperately. One observer collapsed. Another immediately replaced him. Then another. Then another. There were too many. The room filled with darkness. The entity's voice echoed overhead. You cannot stop what has already begun. An observer seized his arm. Another grabbed his shoulder. Cold flooded through his body. His strength vanished. The signal surged into his mind. Memories disappeared faster. Names, places, years, everything fading. Then the trapped voices screamed. Thousands of voices, together. The sound overwhelmed the signal. Observers recoiled. For a brief moment, the entity lost control. That moment was enough. Rayan broke free. He charged toward the resonance machine. The equipment crackled violently. Energy pulsed through the cables. The tower outside glowed bright red. The sky continued splitting open. No time remained. Rayan lifted the metal pipe, then drove it directly into the machine. The result was immediate. A blinding explosion of light erupted through the station. Every monitor shattered. Every speaker screamed. The resonance machine exploded. The transmission tower shook violently. Outside, lightning struck the structure. Once, twice, 3 times. The tower began collapsing. The entity roared, not in anger, in fear. The cracks in the sky started closing. Darkness retreated. The signal weakened. The observers collapsed one by one. Their bodies disintegrated into ash. The station trembled around him. Walls cracked. Floors buckled. The entire structure was dying. Rayan ran. Behind him, the station collapsed. Flames erupted. Glass shattered. The tower finally broke apart. Thousands of tons of steel crashed into the forest. The impact shook the mountain. A final roar echoed across the sky. The hollow entity, being dragged back, pulled away. The opening closed. The darkness vanished. Silence followed. Complete silence. For the first time in weeks, the humming was gone. Rayan fell to his knees in the rain, exhausted, broken, alive. Above him, the storm began clearing. Stars appeared, one by one. The nightmare was over. Or so he thought. 3 months later, winter had arrived. Life slowly returned to normal. No more emails, no more recordings, no more whispers. Investigators found nothing unusual at Blackthorn Ridge. Official reports blamed the collapse on weather and structural failure. Nobody believed Rayan's story. Eventually, he stopped telling it. One evening, he sat alone in his apartment. Snow fell outside. The television played quietly in the background. For the first time in months, he felt peace. Then the screen flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. Static appeared. Rayan froze. The room became silent. The static lasted only seconds, then disappeared. The television returned to normal. Nothing happened. Several moments passed. Rayan slowly relaxed. Maybe it was just interference. Maybe a notification appeared on his laptop. One new email. No sender. No subject. His blood turned cold. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside was only a single attachment. Recording 20.wave. Below it sat one sentence. Thank you for opening the door. Rayan stared at the screen. Outside, somewhere far beyond the snow-covered city, a low humming sound began to rise once again.